Hello, I'm Patrick Wanis, human behaviour expert, PhD. There's been a recent spate of what appears to be clear examples of police brutality. Police using excessive force and being engaged in punchings, beatings and killings. Why? Why is this happening? Let's first look at the possible motives of why someone would want to become a police officer or become a law enforcement officer. Number one, family tradition. My father was a policeman, I'm going to become a policeman. Two, it's a job. Three, it's a job that once used to offer a lot of respect. Four, I or someone close to me or in my family was injured or wronged and I want to make up for it. Five, I've witnessed injustices in the world and I want to make up for them. Six, seeking a job that offers power and respect. Seven, looking for a job that offers power because I don't feel powerful. Seven, looking for a job that gives me the opportunity to be powerful and therefore use that power to my advantage. Now, here are five possible reasons why we're seeing these examples of police brutality and police violence. In other words, here are five reasons why police are potentially losing control and becoming violent. Number one, inadequate psychological screening. In other words, we have currently psychological screening for candidates that rules out things such as psychopathy or extreme antisocial behavior. But it doesn't focus on what would the ideal police personality be? What would the ideal psychological profile be for a police officer? Now, there has been decades and decades of studies done to determine, is there a typical police personality? And there's never been a definitive police personality identified. However, that leads us to number two. Once we have people who have entered the police force and become law enforcement officers, their personality changes. We call this a tainted working personality. And let me quote from studies how the personality changes. And before I quote, think about what police see on a daily basis. Murder, rape, suicide, people being cruel to each other, human misery, sexual assault, sexual abuse of children, rape, violence, etc. This affects a person. It affects their psyche. And here is what the studies found about the way a policeman's working personality changes. The result is a tainted working personality, an officer who's now distrustful of outsiders, cynical, conservative, in other words, resistant to change, suspicious, pessimistic, pragmatic, prejudicial, and isolated. In other words, police officers also isolate themselves. When they go home, instead of connecting with their family, they disconnect, they shut down their emotions, and that creates more problems at home as the police officer is seen to be unemotional, disassociated, and uncaring. Now, this leads us to number three, stress, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and brain functioning, police losing control of their emotions. Now, think about the trauma that police experience on a daily basis. The only way to handle that is to shut down the emotions and to disassociate. Whilst that protects a policeman, it doesn't help him psychologically or emotionally, because in the end, all he knows how to do is to respond and express anger and rage. Therefore, police need more training in emotional intelligence. There was also a study done recently of 464 police officers over a period of 5 years. And here's what they basically found. That trauma affects the brain. That the MRIs of police brain show serious emotional problems. Now, what we mean by that is that the stress was linked with increased levels of sleep disorders, Hodgkin's lymphoma, brain cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and suicide. In fact, almost 1 out of every 5 police officers have PTSD. The trauma of what police experience shrinks the cells of the brain in the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that controls emotional impulses. Therefore, if those cells shrink with enough stress, with enough trauma, it's easy for someone under more duress and under more stress to lose control and become violent. Number 4, potential reason for police violence, the refusal to ask for help. There's a subculture within the police force that says you're expected to be superhuman and you cannot ask for help. You cannot ask for help because you'll be looked down upon, or it could result in demotion, or could result in some other loss. Finally, number 5, the corruption of power. Back in 1887, Lord Acton said, all power tends to corrupt, absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. All great men tend to also be bad men. So we've seen this with priests, politicians, and CEOs, executives, and other people in positions of power. If they're not taught to, on a daily basis, monitor their own behavior, and if they're not checked properly, then it's easy to give into the seduction and the temptation of power. Power is very tempting, and it's easily for the power to corrupt a person. My 5 points here are that there are solutions. There is a solution. We need to change the screening for candidates, number one. We need to look at the stress and the trauma that police experience. We need to work on dealing with stress, and we need to teach police officers more emotional intelligence. We need to monitor the corruption of power and watch the incrementalism of police misconduct. And number 5, we need to change the actual culture within the police force that says you have to be superhuman, you have to be perfect. If you'd like to read more, you can go to my site, patrickwanis.com, to read about the 5 reasons police lose control, become violent, and kill. I'm Patrick Wanis of patrickwanis.com.